Chapter 16, An Unexpected Surprise. Bang! The burly man didn't have a chance to react before a heavy blow struck his head. With a dull thud of bone and flesh, his head slammed against the vehicle and then rebounded like a ball. He groaned and collapsed to the ground, lifeless like a rag doll. Su Heng quickly grabbed the little girl and, with a swift motion, kicked the nearby sturdy woman. Another thud echoed as she was hurled away, screaming, "Help! Catch the traffickers!" Su Heng shouted as he ran with the little girl in his arms, desperately calling for help. He sprinted frantically, worried the traffickers' accomplices might catch up. He was sure the battered van was their getaway vehicle. After running for a while, he spotted a police booth in the distance and finally slowed down, letting out a sigh of relief. "Are you okay, little girl?" Su Heng asked, glancing at the girl in his arms with concern. The girl, with her bright, wide eyes, looked at him and sweetly said, "Big brother, you're amazing." Her cuteness made Su Heng's heart melt. "Of course," he replied with a smile. Just as he was about to ask where she was from and how to contact her family, he realized something surprising. He had suddenly become incredibly strong. Moments ago, he had been solely focused on rescuing her, driven by adrenaline and nerves, without much thought. Now, reflecting on the whole event, he was astonished. He had knocked out, or maybe even killed, a burly man with one punch. And he had run so fast. He had sprinted several hundred meters carrying a little girl and wasn't even winded. "Holy cow, my physical fitness has improved," Su Heng exclaimed, astonished. His intelligence had increased after his first successful investment in subscription certificates. Could acquiring the 6 state-owned stores have boosted his physical fitness? Every successful investment brings a corresponding reward. Realizing this, Su Heng was even more excited. System. Is there a system? Su Heng wondered silently, hoping for a response like, "System activated, host, what's your question?" But there was no answer. "Well, system or not, as long as there are rewards, I'm happy. I wonder if there will be more next time." Su Heng wasn't too disappointed. His intelligence was enhanced, and his body was stronger. These were unexpected surprises. "Big brother." The little girl's soft voice brought Su Heng back to reality. He smiled, reaching out to wipe the tears from her cheeks, and asked, "What's your name?" "My name is Wen Xiaowen." "What about you, big brother?" "I'm Su Heng. How can I contact your parents?" "Brother Heng, thank you for saving me. I know my home phone number. Your family must be worried sick. Let's call them first." As they talked, 2 on-duty police officers with batons rushed over from the police booth. Su Heng quickly recounted what had happened. The officers blew their whistles, calling for backup as they sped towards the scene. Su Heng followed behind, still holding Wen Xiaowen. With his newfound strength, he thought he might be able to help. When they arrived, the van was gone, and so were the traffickers Su Heng had knocked out. "Damn it, they got away," Su Heng muttered, frustrated. If he had known he was so capable, he wouldn't have run. The traffickers in the van probably weren't his match, but if they had weapons, it would have been different. He decided to leave the rest to the police. Su Heng went with the 2 officers to the nearest police station. The police contacted Wen Xiaowen's family and questioned them about what had happened. Wen Xiaowen clearly explained how she had gotten separated from her family and how the traffickers targeted her until she sought Su Heng's help. Su Heng then briefly described his rescue. "You took down 2 traffickers with just a punch and a kick, one of whom was a burly man over 1.8 meters tall. And you rescued the girl right under their noses." Captain Gao Tijun of the Criminal Investigation Unit stared at Su Heng in disbelief. "Are you kidding me? A bookish guy like you can fight like that?" "I was panicking, my mind was a mess, so I don't remember the details clearly," Su Heng replied vaguely. He worried about being exposed. What if some secret agency took him for research? Brother Heng is really... Wen Xiaowen wanted to defend her rescuer but noticed Su Heng's look and quickly fell silent. Sensing something was off, Gao Tijun squatted down and gently asked, "Little girl, what do you want to say? What's special about your brother Heng? Don't be afraid, I'm here to catch bad guys." Wen Xiaowen shook her head but then said seriously, "But you haven't caught the bad guys who took me. Why aren't you going after them, uncle?" She wanted to say that brother Heng was amazing. She saw with her own eyes how the bad guy's head hit the van, leaving a big dent, and how he ran faster than a sprinter. "Well, My colleagues are already on it. Don't worry, we'll bring those bad guys to justice. Gao Tijun replied with an awkward smile. Just then, the sound of screeching tires and hurried footsteps came from outside. Wen Xiaowen's family had arrived after receiving the news. As everyone was distracted, Su Heng quietly slipped away. It wasn't the time for him to stand out. As he exited the police station, he noticed two military jeeps with army plates and armed soldiers standing nearby. My dear Wanner, a beautiful, elegant young woman, her eyes red and swollen, opened her arms and hugged Wen Xiaowen tightly, kissing her repeatedly and crying as if she was afraid of losing her daughter. Mom, I'm fine. You're a grown-up, why are you crying? Look, I'm not even crying, Wen Xiaowen comforted her mother, wiping her tears with her small hands. My precious, you scared me to death. Song Ru finally noticed the onlookers and tried to calm her emotions. Mom, it was Brother Heng who saved me. Wen Xiaowen looked around but didn't see Su Heng. She became anxious and teared up. Ah, Brother Heng was just here. Wanner, don't worry. Mom will find your Brother Heng for you, Song Ru gently comforted her daughter. Soon, high-ranking city police officials arrived and personally organized a large police force to ensure the traffickers who dared to invade Shanghai were brought to justice. By early morning, an elite police squad raided a rundown house on the outskirts and captured the entire trafficking gang. The police were shocked by the severe injuries of two of the gang members. One burly man had a fractured face and was in a deep coma, likely to be left a vegetable. A woman had 3 broken ribs and severe internal injuries. Chapter 17, A Joyful Celebration. Song Ru brought her daughter home and used family connections to track down her daughter's savior. Wanner, tell me about the brother who saved you. What kind of person is he? Brother Heng is so handsome, like a superhero. Those 2 people were going to shove me into the car, but Brother Heng appeared out of nowhere, knocked them out, and then carried me to find the police. Wen Xiaowen described the events with enthusiasm. Fly, Song Ru thought, puzzled. There's no such thing as flying people. She dismissed it, knowing that children at this age tend to exaggerate. Don't worry, we'll definitely find Brother Heng. Brother Heng doesn't want others to know how amazing he is. I'm only telling you, Mom, so you have to keep it a secret. Don't worry, dear, I won't tell anyone. As Su Heng left the police station and was heading back to his hotel, a black Santana sped by and then reversed to stop beside him. The window rolled down, revealing a beautiful face with slightly parted cherry-red lips. It was Xu Yali, the saleswoman Su Heng had met when he first bought subscription certificates. Mr. Su. Xu Yali hadn't expected to run into Su Heng while out for a drive to clear her mind. Good evening, Miss Xu. Su Heng greeted her with a smile. Where are you going? I can give you a ride. No trouble, Miss Xu. It's very close. I'll walk back myself. Mr. Su, you're not dissatisfied with my car, are you? Xu Yali pretended to be upset. Su Heng shook his head with a smile. In this era, a Santana is quite a good car. There's a saying, drive a Santana and fear nothing. Since the beautiful woman offered, he decided to accept the ride. Have you been drinking? Let me drive. Su Heng noticed a faint smell of alcohol and saw Xu Yali's flushed face, indicating she had been drinking. Actually, drunk driving wasn't a major issue at that time. All right. Xu Yali didn't insist and gave up the driver's seat to Su Heng. He sat down, calmly adjusted, and started driving. It was his first time behind the wheel since his rebirth. Shifting gears, releasing the clutch, and pressing the gas pedal, the car started smoothly. Su Heng quickly found his driving rhythm and grew more proficient. Mr. Su, your driving skills are impressive. Xu Yali had been worried Su Heng might not drive well because of his age, but he drove even better than she did. Compliments from a beautiful woman made Su Heng, a young man, think in a less innocent direction. Miss Xu, where are you headed? I'll drop you off first. Xu Yali shook her head. Mr. Su, would you mind having a drink with me? Having a drink. Su Heng hadn't expected the beautiful woman to make such an invitation. He could tell she was in a bad mood and seemed to want to drink away her troubles and talk. Sure. Su Heng, feeling somewhat lonely himself, agreed. A few minutes later, Su Heng followed Xu Yali to a small courtyard near the bund. The yard was adorned with well-trimmed flowers and vines covering the overhead space. Soft moonlight filtered through the sparse branches and leaves, casting dappled light. Entering the main house, the room was spacious and elegantly furnished, complete with a refrigerator, TV, and air conditioning. Such a house near the Bund would be hard to buy even with money in later years. Su-heng marveled that Shu-yali must have influential parents or a wealthy husband to live here. Shu-yali had prepared some cooked dishes and took out a bottle of red wine and a bottle of Maotai. Now that we're home, calling you Mr. Su feels distant. If you don't mind, let's address each other as siblings. Shu-yali tilted her head playfully and asked, how about it, Su-heng, little brother? All right, Yali. Su-heng smiled and nodded. Good brother, I'll have the red wine, and you have the Maotai. Shu-yali handed the Maotai to Su-heng and poured herself a half glass of red wine. To our health. To our health. They clinked their glasses and each drank half. Soon, Shu-yali became slightly tipsy and started to open up. My dad always says he cares about me and wants me to be happy, but why doesn't he consider things from my perspective? Shu-yali spoke, her breath mingled with alcohol, clearly upset. Yali, what happened? Su-heng knew the beautiful woman needed a listener and cooperated by asking. HMPH, my stepmother has been persuading my dad to have me marry her nephew, but I find that pretty boy annoying. I absolutely refuse to agree. Shu-yali said angrily, downing a glass of wine in one gulp. Su-heng drank along with her and said firmly, Yali, I support you. Life is only lived once. Love should be passionate and with the person you love. You hit the nail on the head, little brother. Good brother, cheers. They chatted and drank freely. Soon, Shu-yali, unable to handle her alcohol, became quite drunk. The room was warm with the air conditioning on, and Shu-yali removed her jacket. If that pretty boy were half as interesting as you, I might have considered it. Shu-yali, leaning on Su-heng's shoulder and treating him as a brother, finally passed out. Drinking so fast, Yali, you can't handle it. Bad little brother, who says I can't? Have more. Shu-yali, eyes glazed, reached for a wine glass on the table. Chapter 18, The Big Boss and the Auction. Early in the morning, Su-heng was the first to wake up. He glanced at Shu-yali, who was still sweetly asleep, and carefully got out of bed. He was relieved to see that Shu-yali was still peacefully dreaming. Almost as soon as he left the courtyard, Shu-yali's long eyelashes fluttered, and she opened her misty eyes. This little rascal, nothing happened, and yet you're so startled. Shu-yali grumbled with a hint of a smile and a flush of embarrassment. She had actually woken up long ago but had been too shy to be the first to rise, it would have been too awkward. After having breakfast at a street-side cafe, Su-heng headed to the department store. He planned to buy a mobile phone, specifically a large, expensive model known as the Big Brother. At the specialty counter, only 5 phones were displayed behind the glass case. A young, attractive saleswoman sat on a stool, preoccupied with checking her reflection in a mirror. Could you show me one of the phones? Su-heng asked, tapping on the counter. What are you knocking for? The saleswoman rolled her eyes dismissively. Can't you see through the glass? You're a saleswoman, shouldn't you assist me? Of course, I need to check it out. Su-heng was irritated. As a top-tier wealthy individual, he found it unacceptable to be dismissed by a lowly saleswoman. Oh, Lu Li was taken aback. She hadn't expected this student-like guy to have such a temper. She sneered, can you even afford it? This phone costs over 20,000. If you break it, can you pay for it? You'd be better off buying a toy from the store downstairs. Don't look down on people. Just give me a phone. Su-heng was about to open his bag and take out some cash. At that moment, a young man in a white suit walked in. He wore gold-rimmed glasses and had his hair styled with mousse, exuding an air of wealth and arrogance. Good afternoon, sir. Lu Li's demeanor changed instantly as she warmly greeted the man in the white suit. Gao Jianhua raised his hand elegantly and pointed to one of the Big Brother phones, smiling, please bring that one for me to try. Certainly, sir. Lu Li promptly took out the phone and handed it to Gao Jianhua with both hands. More than 20,000. So expensive. Gao Jianhua shook his head. I just returned from the US. The price there, converted to RMB, is only a bit over 10,000. You're selling it for more than 20,000. Yes, sir, due to high import taxes. That's true. How much is it exactly? 21,800. Can you lower the price? I'm sorry, sir. That's the price set by our boss, and we can't lower it. Lu Li explained with a pleasant tone. Under 20,000 might be acceptable. Never mind, I'll buy it in the US instead. Gao Jianhua was put off by the price. Hearing that the man in the white suit wasn't buying, Lu Li's expression grew cold, though she still forced a smile. Boss Su. Suddenly, a voice called out from behind. A tall man with a cigarette in his mouth, carrying a black leather bag and looking rough, hurried over. Boss Huang. Su Heng recognized him from the auction and remembered he had left his contact information. Haha, what a coincidence to meet you, Boss Su, in my little store. Huang Fuyong laughed heartily. This is Boss Huang's store. Su Heng smiled, thinking how coincidental it was. Are you here to buy a Big Brother phone? Yes. Su Heng glanced at Lu Li, who looked stunned, and said nonchalantly, but your saleswoman suggested I go downstairs to buy a toy. Huang Fuyong's face darkened immediately, and he glared fiercely at Lu Li. Explain this. I'm sorry, Boss Huang. I didn't know he was your friend. Lu Li was almost in tears. She had mistakenly taken Su Heng for a poor student. Damn it, what good is an apology now? You need to make amends with Boss Su, or get out and quit right now. Huang Fuyong scolded angrily. He guessed Su Heng was a big shot and was trying to make amends. He was furious that his saleswoman had offended someone important. Boss Su, I'm truly sorry. I didn't recognize your importance. Please forgive me. Lu Li, frightened by her boss's anger, kept apologizing. Stop making a fuss. Su Heng didn't want to lower himself by arguing with a mere saleswoman. Thank you for your understanding, Boss Su. Lu Li dared to stand up, wiping her tears, and glanced timidly at Huang Fuyong. Huang Fuyong waved impatiently, go to the side. Lu Li obediently moved to a corner, head lowered and eyes on the ground. Boss Su, I've tested these phones myself, and this one has the best quality and signal. I saved it especially. Huang Fuyong took out a brand new phone from the drawer. Alright, how much is it? Su Heng asked. Talking about money is so unfeeling. It's just a phone. Please take it, Boss Su. Consider it a compensation for any inconvenience you've faced in my store. Huang Fuyong said generously. Lu Li was shocked. That phone was worth more than 20,000, and it was being given away just like that. Boss Huang, you don't think I can't afford it, do you? Su Heng joked. No, Boss Su, you're the real big shot. Huang Fuyong was embarrassed. At the auction, he had seen Su Heng bid 1.5 million with such calm and composure. Comparing himself, he felt like an uncultured bumpkin. Chapter 19. It's my freedom who I'm with. Huang Fuchun insisted on charging only 20,000. Su Heng accepted without further discussion and completed the activation process, which cost him a few thousand more. After testing the phone and finding the call quality clear, he casually tossed it into his bag. For someone accustomed to smartphones, the bulky, Big Brother phone held no interest. Yet, his seemingly indifferent action made Huang Fuchun and Lu Li gape in amazement. Such an expensive item, worth over 20,000, was treated like trash. This guy is extraordinary. Huang Fuchun was even more convinced and resolved to build a relationship with Su Heng. Mr. Su, if you plan to rent out those 6 stores, please let me know in advance. The rent is negotiable, Huang Fuchun said, referring to the 6 state-owned stores Su Heng had won in the auction. I haven't checked out those stores yet. I'll decide later, Su Heng replied casually. What? You haven't even looked at them? Huang Fuchun was astonished. He had visited the stores numerous times to assess them before the auction. This young man had bought them without even seeing them. Unbelievable. Lu Li was wide-eyed with shock. She knew her boss had been busy with the auction and was stunned that the stores ended up with this young man. He was no poor student but a young and wealthy individual. She regretted her earlier mockery and wished she could disappear. As Su Heng left the mall, he planned to sell a few subscription certificates and then head to Beijing to purchase courtyards. However, he was stunned to see a beautiful woman leaning against a black Santana, glaring at him. Su Heng quickly composed himself and greeted her nonchalantly. Good morning, Yali. HMPH. Shu Yali was fuming, but Su Heng's sweet greeting softened her resolve. Careless jerk. Shu Yali scolded, though her lips betrayed a smile. Su Heng felt embarrassed and tried to explain, Yali, nothing happened between us last night. I was sound asleep and didn't even know what was going on. Shu Yali's face flushed with embarrassment. I know nothing happened, or you'd be in trouble. But then, who lifted my sweater? She had been so drunk, her clothes were disheveled. Was it really nothing? She grew more embarrassed as she thought about it but couldn't bring herself to speak. Yali, do you want to hit me to vent? Su Heng, trying to lighten the mood, approached with a cheeky grin. Shameless fool. Shu Yali bit his wrist, leaving marks that started to bleed. Hey, you're really biting. Su Heng felt little pain but saw the bite marks clearly. Shu Yali was taken aback by her own actions. She was usually demure, how could she act so wildly in public? Yali, you too. At that moment, Gao Jianhua walked out of the mall and saw the scene. He stared in disbelief, thinking his elegant goddess was flirting with another man. Shu Yali ignored Gao Jianhua and turned her head away. Gao Jianhua, the man her family had introduced her to, scowled and demanded, Yali, what's going on? Don't you owe me an explanation? Explanation? Shu Yali replied coldly, Mr. Gao, do we have any relationship? What right do you have to demand an explanation? Gao Jianhua was momentarily stunned. Legally, Shu Yali was not his responsibility. She had never responded to his affections. Despite his prestigious background and charm, he was confident Shu Yali would eventually be his. His anger was due to seeing her so close with Su Heng. Our parents have already agreed, Gao Jianhua said, finding an excuse to vent. I suggest you behave yourself. Gao Jianhua, I'll say this again, I have no relationship with you. Who I choose to be with is my own business. Shu Yali said coldly, then linked arms with Su Heng and walked towards her. Santana. Su Heng sighed, realizing he was being used as a shield. As they drove away, he heard Gao Jianhua's shouts. Shu Yali, you'll regret this. Kid, I don't care who you are, but you'd better stay out of my way, or you won't know what hit you. Gao Jianhua was deeply humiliated and vowed to make this couple pay. Su Heng wasn't concerned about Gao Jianhua's threats. As someone reborn with immense wealth and strength, he was confident he could handle any future challenges. Seeing Su Heng's confidence, Shu Yali felt slightly reassured and decided to warn Gao Jianhua against any further trouble when she returned. Yali, I'm going to the bank to get something, Su Heng said, parking at the industrial and commercial bank. Shu Yali waited in the car while Su Heng went in to retrieve 3 subscription certificates. He planned to sell them and then head to Beijing. Yali, are you still interested in buying subscription certificates? Su Heng asked. Of course, but they're hard to come by right now, Shu Yali said, her eyes lighting up when she saw Su Heng pull out 3 certificates. She thought he had only bought 3 and sold them to her, so how did he have more? Chapter 20, The Scholar's Identity Finally Revealed. Are you really buying all 3 sets? Shu Yali asked, a bit uncertain. Su Heng nodded seriously. If I didn't need the money urgently, I'd give them to you for free. Shu Yali lightly tapped him and playfully scolded, I'm not the type to take advantage of you. She looked troubled, realizing she didn't have enough cash on hand and would need to ask her family for help. But she had just had a disagreement with them the night before. I'll make a call first, she said, deciding to contact her father. Just as she was about to find a public phone, Su Heng pulled out a large cell phone he had just bought. Surprised, Shu Yali teased, wow, hiding your wealth, aren't you? So, you're secretly loaded. It's not that I'm hiding it, you just don't know me well enough, Su Heng replied, thinking to himself that being wealthy was nothing, his real goal was to become a global tycoon. You're right about that, she chuckled. Shu Yali dialed her father's office number. As soon as the call connected and she said, Dad, a stern voice interrupted her, Yali, Jianhua said you're with a young man. Shu Yali gritted her teeth, cursing Gao Jianhua for being such a tattletale. Dad, do you believe Gao Jianhua or your own daughter? She asked without offering any explanation. Shu Ziheng paused, then let out a wry smile. You little rascal, testing your old dad now. Of course, I believe my precious daughter. But, fathers know their daughters best, and he knew his daughter was well-behaved and well-mannered. However, he also felt that Gao Jianhua wouldn't make baseless claims. Shu Yali cut him off. Dad, I need you to prepare cash for 3 subscription certificates. Shu Ziheng's interest peaked at the mention of 3 certificates. Yali, someone's selling 3 sets. Subscription certificates were in high demand, and it was rare to find someone selling 3 at once. A friend urgently needs cash. But let me be clear, the price must be fair, she added. Got it. I'll arrange the cash right away. I'll have it ready in half an hour. Half an hour later, Su-heng received 300,000 yuan in cash. Combined with what he had left, the total came to just over 350,000. Afterward, he and Xu Yali went to have lunch together. As they ate, they chatted and got to know each other better. After lunch, Xu Yali bought a copy of the Shanghai Morning Post and then drove Su-heng to the train station. As Su-heng drove, Xu Yali flipped through the newspaper. Wow, this high school student scored 738 points. That's insane, she exclaimed. Hey, Heng, there's another Su-heng with the same name as you. Her eyes narrowed as she looked at Su-heng, her gaze piercing as if she was trying to see right through him. Both were high school students from the same place, Jiangzhou. And they shared the same name. Feeling her intense stare, Su-heng chuckled and sighed internally. Well, looks like my identity as a scholar is finally exposed. Alright, Yali, don't stare so hard. I admit it, that person is me, he confessed. Really? It's really you. Xu Yali was taken aback. She had been deeply impressed by him from the first moment they met. The more time she spent with him, the more she realized how unfathomable he was. He constantly surprised her. What captivated her most was the mysterious aura around him, so enigmatic and compelling. It's just a test result, does it have to be such a big deal? Su-heng said, feeling a bit helpless. He hadn't expected his name to make it from Jiangzhou to the Shanghai newspapers. If he had known, he would have aimed for a lower score. 738 points. How on earth did you manage that? You're like some kind of genius. Xu Yali couldn't help but exclaim excitedly. If I'm not human, what am I, then? Su-heng joked, trying to change the subject. You're a god, or a trickster, she said, intending to call him a divine being but then adding, trickster, with a playful grin. She burst into laughter at her own joke. Su-heng, not too pleased, looked at her charming smile and said, just call me a god, there's no need to add, trickster. No way, I'm keeping it. She giggled. Really not taking it off. Really not. Alright, then, hands off and drive properly, she scolded, half annoyed, half amused. Su-heng grinned mischievously. Didn't you praise my driving skills? Don't worry. I'm so good I could drive 2 cars at once. Brag all you want. No one can drive 2 cars at the same time, Xu Yali scoffed, sensing it was impossible. Su-heng almost blurted out that she was like a special car to him. They joked and bantered all the way to the train station. As Xu Yali watched Su-heng walk into the station, she suddenly felt a hollow sensation inside. This emptiness made her feel unsettled. Could she be falling for this young man? It was too soon. They had only known each other for a few days. How could she develop feelings so quickly, especially for someone younger? At 21, she was at least 3 years older than him. Was she really becoming an older woman in this situation? Sitting in her car, the more she thought about it, the more flustered and embarrassed she became. Her face burned red, and she couldn't calm her mind. On the train, Su-heng's thoughts were filled with his plans to buy courtyard houses. Before he knew it, he drifted off to sleep. In the early hours, when people are at their most tired and least alert, Su-heng caught a faint, familiar fragrance. He opened his eyes slightly and saw a girl, around 13 or 14 years old, standing beside him. Her delicate, fair fingers were slowly pulling at the zipper of his bag. What a waste to use such beautiful fingers for stealing, Su-heng thought, amused, deciding to play along with the little thief. Unexpectedly, the girl's nimble fingers suddenly revealed a glinting knife. Wow, those little hands are really skilled, Su-heng mused, impressed by her technique. He didn't intervene and watched as the girl made a small cut in the bag, deftly slipped out a 100 yuan bill, and quietly slipped away. Only taking 100, Su-heng was surprised. His bag was full of stacks of money, each stack being 10,000 yuan. It would have been easier to grab a whole stack or more.